Welcome to True Crime Bites, Death Row and Executions, where we honor lives lost and revisit the final chapters of those who crossed the line. On July 31st, 2025, after more than 3 decades on Florida's death row, Edward James Zakrzewski II is scheduled to die by lethal injection. He isn't a household name, but what he did in the summer of 1994 still haunts Northwest Florida, because Zakrzewski didn't just murder 3 people, he murdered his entire family, his wife, his son, his daughter, and not in a moment of rage, but in a calculated act that shattered the illusion of safety inside the home. Zakrzewski was 29 years old at the time, a technical sergeant in the U.S. Air Force stationed at Eglin Air Force Base. He was originally from Kalamazoo, Michigan, but his journey to that fateful night in Mariester, Florida, started years earlier, thousands of miles away. In 1986, while stationed in Montana, Zakrzewski met a South Korean woman named Poon Im. After she became pregnant, they married, and she adopted the American name Sylvia. The couple had 2 children together, Edward III, who went by Kim, and their younger daughter Anna. From the outside, they seemed like a typical military family. Zakrzewski served overseas, including a 3-year stint back in South Korea between 1989 and 1992. But beneath the surface, things were unraveling. Sylvia, who had already faced discrimination in South Korea for marrying an American and raising biracial children, found herself isolated again when she relocated to Florida. Tensions in the marriage grew. Sylvia had been deeply unhappy for a long time, and in June 1994, she made a decision. She wanted to divorce Zakrzewski. Not only that, she planned to take their children back to South Korea with her. It wasn't a threat. It was a plan, one she had thought through carefully, and one that would lead to the darkest day in the lives of her young children and the last day of her own. On the afternoon of June 9, 1994, while at work, Zakrzewski received a phone call. Their son Kim had mentioned the plan to his father. That call changed everything. Instead of returning to duty, Zakrzewski drove to a local store during lunch and bought a machete. Then he went home, retrieved a crowbar and some rope, and hid all of it in the bathroom. He waited. That evening, when Sylvia and the children came home, Zakrzewski launched his attack. He struck Sylvia multiple times with the crowbar, fracturing her skull. Then he wrapped the rope around her neck and strangled her. But that wasn't enough. When he was done, he dragged her body into the bathroom and hacked her further with the machete, blow after blow. Medical examiners confirmed she was still alive after the initial attack. She died from a combination of blunt force and sharp force trauma. Next, he called Kim into the bathroom to brush his teeth. Kim, just 7 years old, walked in unsuspectingly and was met with a machete. Zakrzewski struck his son with enough force to leave fatal injuries to the head, neck, and back. Kim tried to fight back. He had defensive wounds on his arms and hands, but he never stood a chance. Then Zakrzewski called 5-year-old Anna. She'd been playing just moments earlier. She walked into the same bathroom, and her father killed her the same way. She too had defensive wounds. The fear she must have felt in those final moments is unimaginable. The idea of a little girl walking into a room thinking she's going to brush her teeth, only to meet that kind of fate, it's something I can't wrap my head around. And knowing she may have heard what happened to her brother first, that's a level of horror no child should ever know. All 3 were dead by nightfall. Zakrzewski didn't stay to face the aftermath. He fled. He drove to Orlando, caught a flight to Hawaii, and vanished. He began living under the alias Michael Green and found refuge at a religious commune, where a local minister let him stay in a shack in exchange for maintenance work. For 4 months, he lived off the grid. Back in Florida, investigators discovered the brutal crime scene and issued an arrest warrant. Zakrzewski had gone AWOL from the military, and when the pieces came together, Police charged him in absentia with the murders of his wife and children. Then came a twist of fate. On October 14th, 1994, the case aired on the popular television series Unsolved Mysteries. The very next day, Zakrzewski turned himself in. The minister who had taken him in had seen the broadcast and remarked how much the killer resembled him. With nowhere left to run, Zakrzewski confessed. He was extradited back to Florida and charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. While awaiting trial, he and another inmate attempted to escape the Okaloosa County Jail, but guards caught them before they could scale the fence. On March 19, 1996, he pleaded guilty to all 3 murders. His defense attorney argued that he had been under extreme emotional distress at the time of the killings, that Sylvia had been unfaithful, that she gambled. She threatened to leave him and take the children forever. They even claimed that he believed the children would suffer in South Korea as mixed-race half-breeds, and that killing them was an act of mercy. But prosecutors saw through the narrative. This wasn't mercy. It was murder, premeditated, brutal, and methodical. On March 31, 1996, the jury recommended death for the murders of Sylvia and Kim. For Anna's murder, the vote was tied 6-6, so they recommended life in prison, but the judge had the final say. On April 19, 1996, Circuit Judge G. Robert Barron overrode the jury's decision. He sentenced Zakrzewski to death for all 3 murders, including Anna's. He stated that Anna was likely the last to die, that she may have witnessed the aftermath of her brother's murder, and that her terror in those final moments was enough to warrant the ultimate punishment. His exact words, "This court cannot imagine a more heinous or atrocious way of dying." Zakrzewski began his long journey through the appeals process. He challenged his conviction and sentencing multiple times. In Florida courts, in the U.S. Supreme Court, and even under newer laws meant to reform how death sentences are handed down. But each appeal was denied. In 2017, a brief window opened when Florida passed a law requiring unanimous jury verdicts for the death penalty. Zakrzewski filed again, but the Florida Supreme Court rejected it, ruling that the law wasn't retroactive. By 2016, Zakrzewski had exhausted all state and federal appeals. He was out of legal options. And in 2023, after public outrage over the Parkland shooting verdict, Florida dropped the unanimity rule entirely. The execution path was clear once again. On July 1, 2025, Governor Ron DeSantis signed Zakrzewski's death warrant. His execution is scheduled for July 31, 2025, at Florida State Prison. He will be the 9th Florida inmate executed that year. In the years since the murders, Zakrzewski's name has largely faded from public view, overshadowed by other high-profile cases like the O.J. Simpson trial, which dominated headlines during the same period. But those who remember the Zakrzewski case know it as one of the most chilling family annihilations in Florida's history. Sylvia wanted a new life for her and her children. She wanted safety, a fresh start. She never got that chance. Kim and Anna were just children, full of energy, curiosity, and love. They never got to grow up. He had time to think, time to stop. But instead, he chose violence, methodically, intentionally. And for what? Control. It's terrifying how quickly something like this can go from a family dispute to irreversible tragedy. And now the man who took their futures away is facing his own end. It's easy to look at stories like this and feel detached because they happened decades ago. But the truth is, domestic violence doesn't have an expiration date. It's still happening. And remembering these stories might be one small way we learn how to stop the next one. Thank you for watching. If this story made an impact on you, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us continue to share the stories of lives lost, justice pursued, and the lessons we must never forget. Stay safe, stay aware, and until next time, take care of one another.